Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
Good evening, and welcome to almost the last lesson, the last presentation of this seminar, Discover the Law of Life. I can see lots of faces tonight. Some of you are new. Just let you know that we call it a health seminar, but it's more about spirituality and health. And Dr. Mueller is so willing to share with us, and he shared with us during this week lots of secrets how our life functions and how our health stays in place. So there are 3 more lessons of this seminar. So tonight is lesson number, I think it's number 8. Tomorrow morning at 11 o'clock will be lesson number 9. And tomorrow night at 7 p.m. right here in this building will be our closing session of this Discover the Law of Life seminar. For those of you who are new with us tonight, Dr. Mueller is a medical doctor who practices medicine in Germany, and he's not also interested in helping people physically, but also in helping them emotionally, and even more, helping them spiritually. And in his studies, he discovered what is the real cause of our disease, what is the real cause for our illnesses. Do you want to know what's the real cause for your sickness? Well, I think you are at the right place tonight. Dr. Mueller has some DVDs also. They are right there on your left as you exit this room. Feel free to take a package of 3 DVDs, so not just one, it's 3 DVDs about anxiety, conflict, and depression. And feel free to leave a donation of any amount. As always, every evening we have been blessed with a musical selection, and tonight we are excited to have the 5th and the 6th grade choir of Tri-City Christian Academy, conducted by Miss Liga. So let's welcome the choir tonight, and then we'll welcome Dr. Mueller. There are more seats available in the front. Feel free to come up here. And the advantage of being up front is that you will hear Dr. Mueller better, and you will be able to see the screen even better. We're getting ready to start the presentation. We're sorry for the delay tonight. But the music was great, wasn't it? Yeah, we are so glad and we are so fortunate to have this beautiful school, this great school, Tri-City Christian Academy. It is a blessing, not just for the students, but also for us as parents and churches in this constituency.
Good evening. Good evening. I hope you had a good week. Those who were here every night, they got some things to know they might have heard the first time. But we want in this 3 more lectures, today, tomorrow too, come to an end of the story. And you see, I use about 90% of my time to explain the problem. Because if the problem is not understood, you can never get to a solution. So most of the time I spend with my patients dealing with the issue. That's why in the seminar I have to explain the issue before I can come to a conclusion. Just not so long ago, I had a young lady and she was sick. She had several diseases, but one that was very uncomfortable was that she has heart arrhythmia. So her heart was not beating in a rhythm, but always with extra systoles, and she could feel every beat of her heart. Imagine how bad it must be. Do you feel that your heart does not work well? And she's only in her 30s. And of course, while I was inviting her to come to consult, we find out that it was an issue that comes out of her heart. That means, by the way she was thinking, she did wrong to her body. Now, what's the cause? Why we get this heart palpitations and all the other things that we all get? The cause comes from an unconscious, unaware to us error. We believe that with us everything is okay. Do you? I was grown up and no one told me, look, you have been born with a disability to think correctly. You judge the things you see the wrong way. And so, of course, I grew up as every other child, and I did not know that a problem is with me. And I told last night my story. I always thought the problem is with my wife. And the world around me. And when I got to my practice to talk to the people, I saw the same thing. Everyone has not a problem with himself, he thinks, but just a problem with the others. And so, I have to bring every patient to the point that he must see the problem is not outside of him, but inside of him. And that is very hard. So when I explained to the lady the idea that she thinks she's God, that's why she behaves like she behaves, that in her mind she has something that looks like good, but actually is evil, she was amazed. And suddenly she asked me, she said, is it my selfishness that makes me sick? She just, and of course, there is no other cause than selfishness. That's hard sometimes to understand. And so, I was very happy when she said it, and then she added to the idea that she said, I never saw myself to be selfish. Have you ever seen selfish people? Yes. Yes or no? Yes. Have you today looked into the mirror? Yes. You see, we see the other selfish, but ourselves, I saw myself that I was bad, but not so bad as my wife. You see, you always will see you a little bit better than others. Always. And there is no exception. If you're sincere with yourself, and you look into the mirror, you will always consider others have greater fault than you. There was just one man in the Bible who said, no, no, I am the greatest of all. Who was it? Paul, the great apostle. He knew that the problem was where? In him. And he knew he had to solve a problem in himself, not outside of him, to be able to conquer. So, when a person sees that the problem is in itself, health is almost 95% restored. If the person cannot see that the problem is in itself, health cannot be restored. Even though we might undo with certain medication, with certain lifestyle changes, we might undo a symptom, but the problem will never be changed. The human will remain in his own bondage, never understanding himself what's wrong with him. So I told this lady, yes, it's selfishness that destroys you, but you inherited it. It's not your fault that you have selfishness in you. But now, when you see it, it's your choice to get rid of it. If you would have been 40 years blind, and someone would come to you and offer to see, would you take it? Yes. And if you would not take that offer, would that be reasonable? It would be just unreasonable to stay blind if you have the need to see, and someone comes to you and say, I offer you the sight, and you would say, no thank you. But the problem is, people only reject to take the light because they think they see. That's why the hardest job for me as doctor is to help the patient on his own disease realize that something is wrong in him, not by choice, but by inheritance. And he must see the inheritance that he got, the chains that bind him, before he can cry out and say, "O wretched man who I am, who can help me?" Now, I ended the session with this lady, and she came a week later to the next counseling, and I was very curious to see what happened that week. You know, when people got to see themselves, they either reject the thing and say, I don't go again to the doctor. Because, you see, I have some people in my church, they know me now for years, even though I'm only once a year in my church usually, because all the other weekends I'm gone. I'm scheduled to preach in my church always the end of the last Sabbath in the year, because then I'm home. With all others, I'm not home. So, now, but they knew me before. And there are some people in my church, they know me. They say, when they have some disease, they say, why didn't you come to me? And they say, well, you will always say me that I have the problem. I say, you got it. If you have the problem, it's changeable. If others are the problem, it's never changeable. You're stuck and nothing can change. So I was curious how this lady would react on the revelation that she's a selfish person. It's the most hardest revelation. Would you like to be selfish? You like it? No, we hate selfishness. That's how God made us. In our will, in our reason, selfishness is something hateful. That's why we hate people who are selfish. But we don't see that we are more selfish than they are. And that's why the problem comes out. That's why we hate them. Because we think we are better. And so, she came back after 1 week. And I was very curious to see how did that idea that she's a selfish person works in her mind. And she came back, and I was expecting, and she said, you know, this week I saw myself like I never saw myself. She said, how controlling I am. I never thought I am like that. I saw the issues that I never saw before in my life. And I rejoiced in my heart. Because this lady is on her way to health. It's just a matter of how she puts it into practice. But she is 95% already ready to be healed. So the greatest thing that we must understand is what's wrong in us. And this is what happened in the universe. As God created the universe, He put everything under that fundamental law we saw last night. You must take in order to give. There is not the smallest atom or the smallest particle in this universe that does not work with this law. Everything must take, and nothing that you take you can keep. It must be given on, because God is giving. And since God is giving, He made everything to be giving, except that the universe and the elements in the universe have nothing to give from themselves. So they must take it first and then give it. But everything was made for the purpose to give. We always are fulfilled when we're giving. The more you give, the better you feel. The less you give, the worse you are. And selfish people don't love those who they see that they are selfish. They are stopped to love them. And so, who gets the problem? He who breaks the law, because he cannot give. He keeps. He said, I cannot love that person. How should I love him? Yes, there is a reason why. Because you not take from God, but you take from that person. That's why you cannot love that person. So, everything is in this universe dependent on God, on this fundamental law. And of course, the secondary laws that everything is dependent on pressure, on time, on pressure and speed. That's not so important, doesn't matter for us. Our problem is the fundamental law of all beings. Who was the first who broke the law? It was the first angel that God created, and this angel was trusting in God. God gave him a lot of good things. The Bible describes him like an angel with many, many things, with diamonds and gold and, just to see how rich he was bestowed by God. But now, this angel is unsatisfied to be just a creature. So, he breaks the law by stopping to take from God. That is, he does not trust God anymore. And then he betrays and brings Adam and Eve into the same situation. They mistrust God, and they come into that change of nature where they now think they are someone that they are not. Adam and Eve didn't see their selfishness. Adam thought that he was a good guy, but Eve was the problem. You see, with Adam, we can see the immediate change of blaming others for your problem. And since then, did it change anything? No, it's the same. Because we inherited that terrible, wrong identity that brings us to this point. Now, when evil entered the universe, did anyone see how evil is? Could it be seen? Was it evident that taking not from God was evil? Was it? No, because you see, evil, when it entered, this is the good. The good is always the normal, because the good is the inside of the law. and the good is infinite. That's why I made this slide to show that the good is infinite. Some people come today and say, we need evil to know good. It's the greatest, I would almost say, stupidity. It's not the good that needs evil to be seen. You need evil to see evil, not to see the good. Because the good is normal. That's why we do not expect the evil, we expect always the good. Because the good was there, and the good is eternal and is infinite, and it is inside the law. The whole universe was inside the law of God, and here now comes an intruder, and the evil comes, but it doesn't look, you see a difference? It's, if you, I could even make it even more not so visible, and you would not see that evil is evil. Why did God wait 4,000 years until He did something about the evil? Some people wonder why. It is exactly because evil had to be seen as evil. That's why evil must be permitted, but it is an intruder. Now you see, here evil gets more visible, is it? It is the anti-law. It's not taking from God. It's taking from someone else. That's the only thing. That's so nice to have a definition of good and evil. The good is inside the law. The evil is outside or against the law. And some people, in my practice, I meet all kinds of people who believe, I don't know what they believe, and they come to me and say, there is no evil on earth. It's only another thing. And I say, look, you cannot keep the law and break it at the same time. And you cannot say that the breaking of the law or the killing is the same good thing or just another thing like keeping the law. So there are anti. They are different. It's an intruder. It's the opposite of the good. They can never be the same thing. You cannot love and be selfish at the same time. You are either in love or you are either selfish. You are either keeping life alive or you destroy it. You either keep the law or break it. There is nothing in between. So it had to take 4,000 years. But how much is 4,000 years compared to eternity? Short. It's very short. So don't take this long period of 6,000 years or 4,000 years until Jesus came to remove the evil was a long period. Yes, for us as humans who do not think on eternal things, we think that's a long time. Because for us, when I was a child, I thought a year is a long time. Now, I have to schedule for 2020, and I think a year is nothing. Just nothing. It is just, yesterday was Christmas, and now it comes again. So, here, it comes out that the evil is evil. And now the question is, can the intruder be eliminated? How can we get rid of our selfishness? How can we get rid of that, what makes us every problem in our life? And there was only one solution, and that is Christ had to remove from the earth and from the human being the evil. The idea that I am God. The main actor in removing the evil is one person that had to become man. Jesus Christ is the one that came to remove the evil. So let's remember, when Adam and Eve sinned, there was a change not outside of them, but inside. From a creature, they became a god. And from the dominion of the earth, they lost it. Lucifer became the king of this earth. He took Adam's place. And we see the result. Do we see it? There is no love. You see, I have atheist people in my practice, and there was one lady one day, she said, you know what challenges me? You say that we need love, but there is no love on earth. Did you see it correctly?
Yes.
Did you see it correctly? Yes. It is so. There is no love on earth, because here on this earth, everyone searches his own will, his own thing. There is no love. And I said, yes, you're right. But we can access the source. Because you see, the need that you have, there must be a source to fulfill it. And it's not on this earth. The source for our love is not on this earth. On this earth, we cannot satisfy our need because it's outside of the earth. So, the first coming of Christ had to remove the wrong idea from the heart of man and bring him back to realize that he is a creature. The second and the third coming of Christ comes once to convince or to destroy at the end Lucifer and the one that remains like they were born, and the other are renewed on the new earth and have the new home. So that is just an overview of the battle and the one that does it. But I had last night, and I could not finish last night, to convince, I hope, everyone that he is a breaker of the law. So, most people think that they are good and they keep the commandments. Just like the rich young ruler who came to Jesus and said, Lord, what shall I do to inherit eternal life? And what did Jesus say? Keep the commandments. He said, which one? Which one did Jesus say to him? Ten Commandments. Let's look. We saw last night that in our hearts we have only two actions, the taking and the giving. And the law of death is selfishness gives in order to receive. And we have in our consciousness relationships. And there are only two causes for a relationship. You either love someone to take from him, or you love someone to give him something. And we saw that you cannot have it both at the same time. On the taking level, you must trust and you're dependent. On the giving level, you're independent. That's how everything works. And God wrote his 10 commandments on 2 tables, and because there are only 2 actions in the heart, the taking and the giving. That's why he wrote it on 2 tables. And the one table is exclusive and the other is inclusive. That's why they cannot be on the same side. Yes? The one is exclusive. The one says where you have to take, where you take from is exclusive, and where you give, it's inclusive. It doesn't matter how many neighbors you have, you can love them all. So the first is exclusive, the other is inclusive. So we saw that the first 3 commandments say you should not take from another God as God. And the 5 last commandments say we should not take from a human. Do not take from here. We saw that last night, and I just repeat it here. And we know that only the 4th commandment is the change of identity, or remembers us that we are creatures, and we can only take from God in order to give to humanity or all those around us. Now, when the rich young ruler comes to Jesus and asks, what shall I do to inherit eternal life? Jesus says, keep the commandments. And then he asks, which ones? You know, the Jewish people had a hierarchy in the commandments. And I make a parenthesis here. There came one day a lawyer to Jesus and said, what is the highest commandment in the law? Yeah? You remember that? And did Jesus answer? Yes, because the lawyer was smart. He said, I have to know what is that commandment which stays at the bottom of everything, the fundamental law. He wanted to know that. And what did Jesus say? To love God from all thy heart, from all thy soul, with all thy strength. That is the greatest commandment of all, and the other is equal to that. Love thy neighbor as self. So what is the greatest commandment? You know, when you keep the greatest commandment, the second is included. Here, you can never break the commandments. They are just a proof if you keep them or not. That's why if you keep the first commandment, the highest commandment to take from God, anything else runs well. And so, here the rich young ruler comes to Jesus, and Jesus says, keep the commandment. Which one did he tell him to keep? Which? The giving or the taking? The giving. He said, honor thy father and thy mother, and so on and so on. It's the giving side that he mentioned. And what did the rich young ruler say?
I do that.
Oh, since my childhood. I'm a perfect person. I always did this. He might have never stolen. He might have never committed adultery. He might have never lied. He might have never coveted his neighbor's whatever. And he might even have honored his parents. And now Jesus answers to him an interesting answer. Does Jesus know that he does not keep the law? How did he know it? Because what did the rich young ruler not do? He did not give. So that's why Jesus says to him, and Jesus is a wise person, because he did not say, hey man, you betray yourself, you lie to yourself, don't you see that you don't keep the commandments? Would the rich young ruler argue with Jesus that he kept them? Would he brought him proofs? I'm convinced he would have brought him all proofs that he has kept them all to the letter. So Jesus doesn't argue with you, but he brings you on a practical level. So he says, okay, there is how many things that you miss? He says, one thing though you miss. And what is it? Give. Give all that you have. And then what will happen? You will have a treasure in heaven, and that means you will have eternal life. Now tell me, did he give? Why did he not give all that he had? From where did he have his riches? From where did he have his riches? He thought that they came from whom? From himself. So where did he take the riches from? He thought he takes them from himself. You know that you never can give anything from yourself except you want something back. You can never give anything that belongs to you except you await a recompense for it. The rich young ruler thought that his riches are from his own work, from his own activities, maybe inherited some from his parents. How can he give the inheritance of his parents to poor people who never worked, who never did anything to do the right? How can he do that? Will it not be a waste? So, where did the rich young ruler break the law? In the giving or in the taking?
Giving.
You can only break the law in taking. If the rich young ruler was convinced that everything that he had came from God, he would have not kept it for himself. Now, do you think it was only for the rich young ruler, this command? Have you ever read Luke 16 from verse 25? There were many people who came after Jesus, and Jesus wanted obviously to get rid of them. I mean, they followed him, and he turned back and he said, hey, do you know why you follow me? Do you know that if you do not hate your mother and your father, your spouse and your child, and your own life, you cannot be my disciple? And if you don't take your cross and die daily, you cannot be my disciple? And then he goes and says, did you do your economy? Did you do your calculations? If you can do that? And at the end, if he says that those two parables, he says, no one can be my disciple except he gives everything he has. Can I ask you if you are a disciple of him? Because, you see, if you are a God, you think all things belong to you. And that's why you cannot give. If you understand that nothing belongs to you, would you ever withhold it? Would you? If you think that when you give it, you get rich, if you know that the giving makes you happy, would you ever keep it? No. So the command is for everyone, because we cannot keep the things that God gives us, because only when we give it, they multiply and get more. So every problem a human faces is in the taking process. When we look to Jesus, and he came on earth to do a work, and let's see what he came to do. Did he came to change an outside situation or an inside situation of man?
Inside.
So where inside?
The heart.
In which heart? In his heart, yes? Jesus came to do and to change a problem in his own heart. That's why the cross must destroy in him that which is wrong in us. So Jesus needed to become man, because you know that from outside you cannot change the man. It's not possible. God had no access to the heart of man, and he still has not. And so he had to become himself a human. So he lay aside his divinity as a functional unit, because you know by the law, a God cannot become a man if he keeps the attributes of divinity. So he had to lay aside his divinity, even though it still exists, and become a human like us, to do a work in himself, that he might then give us as an inheritance. Like we have the inheritance from Adam, we now need another inheritance that comes from the second Adam. So Jesus had a mother and a father. He had a mother that was human, and he had a father that was divine. Yes? We know that the Holy Spirit came over Mary, and Jesus was he was 100% man, half from his father and half from his mother, like all of us. So physically and spiritually, Jesus was half from his father and half from Mary. So from where did he got the 23 or 46? The chromosomes. Which one is that you are a man? From whom did he get them?
God.
From God. Yes. So he had his manhood as a man from God, because in Mary there is no Y chromosome. Jesus was a man, and he had his manhood from his father. And so also his half of his spirit came from his father, like half of his spirit came from his mom. So by the law of heredity, that can never be changed because it's God's law, Jesus had to take everything from his father and everything from his mother, like we all have it. He only was different to us because we have two parents that are humans. But he had one parent that was divine. That's why Jesus was connected to his father since when? From inception, yeah. He was connected through trust to his father because he came from his father. So when he became a man and lived on earth, he had to fight that what he inherited from his mother. And so he overcame that, and at the cross it was eliminated from him before he even died. And so he now gives us the victory for us as inheritance. But Jesus is also a pattern. And that what I painted before was the subconscious. Now we want to go a little bit in his consciousness to see how did he get the victory over his heart. Because that you must do in your consciousness with your reason and your will. That's the two elements that there play the major role. Your reason and your will. So let's see his first temptation. You now know that any temptation can be only in one point. So Jesus was tempted what to do? To take from whom? He was tempted to listen to the suggestion of Satan. Who came and said, Jesus, you're hungry. You're the Son of Man, of God. I think your father forgot you. Help yourself. If not, you die. And what did Jesus say? Man does not live by bread alone. So Jesus said, if I die, I won't take from you then. Because I am just bound to my Father in trust. The second temptation was jump from the temple. Why did Jesus not jump? Because the devil said, you have the promise of God that nothing will happen. Would you have jumped?
No.
Why not? Because if you take the Bible and their promises without complying with the conditions, that means you jump without God telling you to jump, the promise doesn't work. And so Jesus did not jump because he said, my Father didn't say to jump me, so why should I jump? Even I have the promise that nothing will happen. So he did not take from the devil. And then comes the third temptation where the devil says, look, you came to take this earth back. I give it to you. Just take it from me. Would that not be easier? What did Jesus say? You have nothing to give me. All these kingdoms belong to my Father. So I only take from my Father because worshipping is what? Giving or taking? Worshipping is taking. We worship God because we take from Him, because we need Him. We cannot give Him anything. What can you give God when you eat bread? That's why He says, you must love me like bread. And I love God like bread. So Jesus reasoned in his mind, and he put his will into action, and in this way he proved his trust in God. Now, let's see the next temptation. Where was Jesus' next temptation that is so written in the Bible? I mean, he was tempted all the time. Imagine when Judas came to him to kiss him, and Jesus knew his heart. Would you have allowed Judas to kiss you? Would you have allowed Judas to say, okay, Judas, you're allowed to kiss me. I know you come like you come with deceptive thing. You don't love me, but you want to just kiss me so that they will take me to see who I am. Would would you have rejected Judas, or would you have said, Judas, you're okay, you can do this to me? Would you give him the freedom? If Jesus would have pushed Jesus a little bit away, he would have sinned. He would have taken from Judas. Yeah? So deep it is, and I share some experience also where I learned where I take from. So, but there comes the greatest temptation of Jesus was in Gethsemane. And it was when the Father gave him the cup. And the Father says, take the cup. And where did Satan stay? Where would you stay if you would like that Jesus should not take the cup? Where would you stay? Just in between the cup and Jesus. He would just stay there and say, don't take it, it's too heavy for you. Don't take it, it will crush you, and for whom shall you die? For whom shall you drink the cup? You don't know the outcome. You will fail. Because the cup is too heavy. Have you ever thought that your cup is too heavy? Almost all people are sick because they think what they have to endure is too much. I once had a lady sitting in my, listening to my presentations. And I knew that just last week, or I don't know, was it last week, or, but however, it was in 1 week, 2 of her daughters had killed themselves. And she was sitting there listening to my presentation. And I was thinking, would I endure that? Would that be something that I could handle? You know what made me to talk to this lady and counsel her later and gave her courage? It was the consciousness that the cup, whatever it is never too heavy. It never can be. In the great day of judgment, when God will reveal every secret in the lives of every man, no one will say, Lord, for me, you had a too heavy cross. The husband you gave me was too much. Or the wife I took was too much. Or the events that were around me, they overwhelmed me. There will be no one. Because when they see everything that God has done, they will see that it was all only measured that one should take it. So the thought that something is too much is just coming because you think you're God. How do you know it's too much? You see, my wife sometimes says to me, you work too much. I said, how do you know? You must be God if you know how much is enough. No one knows that. Only God knows it. You see, I have this experience when I'm in my practice and I'm tired, and I have always in the evening my last counseling, and it takes an hour and a half or 2 hours, sometimes 3, depends. And so I'm so tired I think I die. And I say, Lord, if the patient comes, I will have power. If the patient doesn't come, I can sleep. You know how good it is that you have a manager that never overworks you? I just had yesterday the very good experience. I was so tired. My eyes fell down at 3 o'clock. And the Lord provided me 40 minutes of sleep. Because the patient just thought he had the schedule at 4 and not at 3. And you know, it's not a singular event. When I'm too tired and I cannot take it, the car doesn't start with the patient. Or he's in a traffic jam. And he calls and says, Doctor, I don't make it. I say, thank God you don't make it. It's so relaxing to know that someone is in control. How heavy is a thing and not. So that's why trust, whatever comes in our life, let's take it as coming from God. Because it's weighed and measured before. So the cup that Jesus was given, the heaviest cup that any man had to drink, was measured by whom? By whom? Who made the cup? The Father made the cup. And the father says, my son, this is the cup. Drink it for the salvation of mankind. For the salvation or for the peace of the whole universe. And the son says, Father. And here is the temptation of the devil with all the pressing elements. It is too much. And Jesus must battle. Tell me, was his drops of blood a battle of works or a battle of faith? Was it a battle of faith or a battle of works? It was a pure battle of faith. Is the Father trustworthy for the cup he gives me, or is it not?
Amen.
And here was his greatest victory. It cost him everything, because he had to go through all the possible outcomes. And did you see one? Did you see one? No. He had to trust his Father that the outcome would be okay if he takes the cup. You see, there are only two temptations that we can fall in. Taking not from God, or that what God gives us, not taking. That's the two temptations that we can fall in. You know it? Not taking what God gives you, or not taking from, or taking from other persons so that we can discern. It's always taking. So Jesus won the victory in faith. And he stood faithful. On the cross, he just proved the victory that he got in Gethsemane. So let us see that Jesus had to reason. And he put his will in action, knowing from experience that the Father will never overwork him. And I hope we get that experience as well. Because I must do and go through the same experience. We must win the battle in our reason and in our will. Because our heart won't let us trust God. That's why when God came to me and said, if you stay with your wife, I will take care of your needs. Now, back then, I don't know what was the reasoning, but I said in my will, yes, I stay. And then he could change the heart. So when I have a patient in my practice, I must bring him to the point of reason. I had a worse case just a few weeks ago. She was 59 years old, a lady with cancer in her whole Unterleib, in her whole abdomen, and she would have not much chances to survive, according to the doctors. And so she asked me to talk to her. She never listened to my presentations. I was just closed there with presentations, and some other person said, would you like to talk to the lady? And I said, I take every invitation like coming from God, so I go. And the lady had a very interesting story. She was not only sick with the cancer, she had other sicknesses as well. But this was a terminal disease, and she was in a bad state. And so she told me her story. When she was 3 years old, the parents gave her to the grandparents. So the grandparents raised her up. When she was 13, she was sexually abused by the brother of her girlfriend. When she was 19, she got married to a husband who proved 30 years later that he was abusing her sons. Because one of her sons died just 8 years ago at the age of 31 with colon cancer. And so she was a devastated lady when she heard what her husband has done to the children, she divorced him. And of course, can she love him? Can she love him? No. There is no possibility to love a husband who does such a thing. And now, here she is. Is she a victim? Does she see herself a victim?
Yes.
Yes. A victim of her parents, a victim of the abuser, a victim of her husband, and a victim of the death of her child. Is she broken? Is the disease just a right picture of her inner heart? Yes. Is there a solution for her? I told her this. I said, look, we have, and you must reason with me, we have in our mind, in our spirit, we have the need for righteousness. Do you have it?
Yeah.
Did you choose it? No. This need for righteousness needs to be fulfilled. If not, you die. Now, if someone did you do this 3 or 4 things wrong to you, can your righteousness need be fulfilled? No. Can the mother and the father pay for what she has done to her? Can the abuser pay his debt? Can the husband pay his debt? Can he?
No.
No. So she must die. There's no choice. Now I appeal to a reason and say, look, that you think that they are owing you something. You have these big debtors to you. If you could release them from their debt, you would be free and God will heal you. Simple, isn't it? For the purpose, that you must see that you think it's your righteousness what was destroyed. But do we have our own righteousness? Theoretically, we know it not. But practically, we don't know it. So, there must be something there that she must be willing to be taken away. And I said to her, you only do this because you think it was done unto you. Would you think it's different? Now, if you're a God, everything what happens is done unto you. But if you are a man, nothing what is done unto you is done unto you. Because the Bible says, for those who know the Bible, he who touches you touches the apple of his eye. Jesus, when he was touched, he was never took it. Person said, my Father is crucified, my Father is rejected, because he knew his identity. I am the Son of my Father. And my Father takes care for what? For righteousness. Because they don't go against my righteousness, they go against my Father's righteousness, not against me. That's why when he was rejected, when he was beaten, he didn't fight back, because it was not about him. It was about his Father's business. And so I said to this lady, who was clear in her mind, if you would see that you're a creature, and this evil was done on you, yes, but it was done unto God. God was meant in what was done to you. And you can leave God to judge. Then your need for righteousness will be fulfilled, because it's not your righteousness. And if you are willing to say, God, make me free from my wrong identity, he will free you. And your spirit will be free, and your body will heal. Can I do more for the patient? Can I? No. She was very alert. I had only 1 hour to talk to her. But when I finished my talk, And I was driving back to where I had to do the meetings. I said, God, she's in your hands. There can be nothing more simple than asking and say, reasonable, I understand it. Now the battle is in reason and in your will. Do you want it? And reason must help you to want it. If reason cannot convince you to want it, you will stay where you are. You cannot change your heart, but you can want to release the people from the debt. Does this lady want to be healthy? Yes. But is she willing to remove the cause of her disease? That's the question. Because all people want to be healthy. But some say to me, if I die, I will never love my mom. Rather die. I say, well, that's what you can. He would like to be healed. People would like to heal, but then, if they don't see the problem and the heart is not healed, then how much is it worth? When I have diseases, and I have often things that come into my body, and I'm very sensitive to what happens, I say, Lord, if you don't help me to see where it was that my selfish nature took over, then this disease is worth nothing. I don't learn anything. And I want to learn. I want to get rid of this terrible idea that I am someone that I'm not. I'm not blaming myself that I haven't. But I am decided it must be removed. And I hope one day, I don't know, but this lady now will look to my presentations and God's Spirit will work on her heart. Is it easy to be saved or hard? You know where the hardness comes from? It's when you go against reason. When you feel the disease, when you see around you, and you must go above the situation and judge it according to the grace that God gives you to do. I so love the story of Naaman. Do you know Naaman's story? The man, you know why he was sick? Why was Naaman got leprosy? Can you deduce it from the story? What was his issue?
Right.
What was his issue?
Right.
His issue was pride, yes. And to remove the cause of his disease, God gave him 3 steps. The first step was he had to listen to a servant from Israel, to a young lady that told him, we have a prophet. And we know from Jesus that the prophet never healed a leper. Leper? Is that
Leper.
a leper? Yes. He never healed one because Jesus says there were many lepers in Israel in the time of Elisha the prophet, and none was healed except Naaman the Syrian. So this young girl was a girl of faith? Yes. She knew the prophet could heal her boss. So she sent him. The boss goes, of course, like a big person, through the king. And Elisha listened and says, oh, send him to me. But now, why did not Elisha go out and tell him, go and bath yourselves 7 times in the Jordan? He knew that his pride must be put to the test. And so he just sends his servants. If you are a big man and you go to the doctor and he just sends the nurse and says, do that, and it's okay. Would you like it? You would get upset. And so Naaman said, I thought he comes out and he asked God to do this and that and praise. But then the servants, the 3rd servants, the servant said to him, look, reason. If he would have asked you something wrong, something heavy, would you have done it? You see, if I would tell my patients, go home and stand 5 minutes like this, and 3 minutes try to stay on your tongue, they would try it. They would do it. But if I say them, you just need to put your will into action and cry out for a God outside of you to save you, they think it's too much. This is it. That's why you see lifestyle medicine works, because you put people to work on what? On works. But it's nothing else than salvation by works. You save yourself by physical elements, while the battle is a spiritual one. I always sometimes get angry with it, because we missed the point. We missed the point. Yes, we remove some symptoms, but the patient is lost forever, because we have not shown him that there's something in his heart that needs to be changed. So the servants of Naaman say, Naaman, reason. He asks you something very simple. You just, here is Jordan, and I was told that Jordan is a very dirty river compared to Syrian waters. It's always dirty. I never was there. But this dirty water, who am I? I go to clean water to wash, not in a dirty river. It's not by chance that that this man said, go into the Jordan and make the washing. And so Naaman said, well, you're right. It's reasonable to do it. What can I lose if I do it? What can I lose? Nothing, because it's not a heavy thing. It just... Did Naaman have faith? Yes. Without faith, you cannot do works. He had to trust that at least it might be functioning. You will never try it if you are convinced it won't function. But you have a little faith that it might work, then you go and do it. And so Naaman did it. He said, let's see if it happens. You know? Let's see if the seventh time I come out of the water, if I'm healed. And suddenly he was healed. But what did God change? His skin or his heart? His heart was changed and his. But what was needed to be changed first? What? His heart. If he would have not followed faith in his heart, he would not have never came to the healing of his body. I so like this story because it's a fantastic story. Now the Naaman goes back in praise to whom? To the prophet who the first time he just was angry about him. Now is now the prophet coming out to talk to him? Yes, now he comes, because now comes a humble man. And then you can talk. Now the test was there. So I was put to my test, as I shared last night. And you might be put to any test. But it's always that I put my patients to a test of faith. If you don't believe it works, or at least it might work, you will never try. But before, you must see your need. You must see that you live in a self-deception. Who destroyed the body of this woman who is 59 years old? Who destroyed that body? Her grandmother? Her mother? The abuser? It was her own thoughts, her own prisonership, her trust in man, her taking from man that brought her to this situation. And now God offers her to take from God and release the debtors. And the moment you release the debtors, why should God not do the miracle to heal her? More I could not do. But I am so happy that I have a message to my patient where I can promise them health, not by my doings, but by who's doing? By their doings. That's why the story of Naaman, and when we look to the Bible, Jesus never said, I healed you. Did he ever say that? He said, it's your faith that healed you, because he gave the responsibility to the one who took from him. Yes, the power came from him, but the action of faith was required from man, because God cannot do faith for us. He cannot take for us, because taking is trust. Taking is dependency. So let's finish with the purification of my heart. The only way to become a new creature is on the cross. That's the only meeting point for a person to be saved. From what? From the deception of his heart, who he is. But I tell you, I was grown up, I never understood the cross. Today I learn to know more and more the mystery of the cross. Like Paul said, the cross is what? It is the power of God. And the Greeks say it is, the Greeks will want wisdom, and the Jewish one, I don't know what, but for us, it is the wisdom and the power of God. And I like that word wisdom there. I like, because wisdom is reason. Reasoning is something that we need to learn again. We must calculate things. We must be able to balance, to see ourselves. We must reason. So the cross is our only salvation, because there is a change. Now, I have painted here the life of Christ. He had two natures. The one he had to crucify, then he was resurrected as the second Adam. He went into heaven as a high priest, and he comes back as king. That's Jesus' work in salvation, that he does outside of us. And this is me. I hope you recognize me. And I was born not from a heavenly and an earthly parent, but just from two earthly parents. How many natures did I have?
One.
I only had one nature. Jesus had two, because he came from father and from mother. And since my mother and my father had the same nature, I had the same nature that them. So how much good did I do in my life until the cross? None. But I considered myself pretty good. I thought that I am the good one and all others are not good. So while you live in this darkness of your mind, of your heart, even the best deeds you do are still selfish. So on the 7th June 2003, when I took the decision to not divorce, to not separate, to stay with my family, I experienced the cross. And on the cross, you get an exchange of life. So my whole life, when I said yes, went on the cross, and Christ took it over, or I became aware that he took it over, and I received his life, his divine nature that he inherited from his father. Through this nature, he brought the victory over the old one, and so on the cross, I become a partaker of his divine nature that he had from his father. And my whole past life is forgiven because it is covered by his life. Now, the cross is an exchange of life. You see, sometimes my wife reminds me on the time before the 7th June 2003. And I say, well, don't talk to me, because that's Jesus' life now. He took it over. Talk to him if you have complaints. I have a new life. I have Jesus' life for me. It's, yes, I can remember everything that I did, mostly the wrongs that I did, but they are not mine anymore. Because there was an exchange of life. The life of Christ now is my past. If I look into the past, how much sins do I see? None. Because if there would be one, it will kill me. So, Christ's life became my life. But was I a saint on 7th June 2003? Did I become a saint? No, unfortunately. I wish. Some people believe that you can be instantly sanctified. It's a total error. Because there is implied a reason. Yes, if I would have died that day, no problem. I would have been died as a saint. Because there would have been no sin. Nothing would be there to condemn me. But now I have a life after the cross. And now, this nature, like Jesus took the parable of where you put the wheat together and put the sourdough. Not the wheat and tears. The yeast, yes? The parable with the yeast. So what happens when you put yeast in a batch of dough? Dough, yes? Dough, okay? When you put some yeast in dough, what happens with it?
Grows.
How much will then be the next day the yeast? You know, the yeast will spread and it will change it. And so Jesus says that's how it is with the kingdom of God. So on 7th June I got the life of Christ, but was I a saint? No. My sinful nature was still there, and there was also the new nature. And now a battle starts. Where is this battle? Inside or outside? It's inside. But it is done on the outside things that come and challenge me. So, how often do I go to the cross?
Daily.
Every day. Because there are still things that I do out of my selfish nature, and I must crucify it daily so that I get away with it. But it is not a mystical going to the cross, it's a reasonable one. I tell you one story that really touched me last year in November. I got into conflict with my mom. I always tell my patients they should never get into a fight with their mom or with their dad, because that's deadly. Yes? Your mom and your father must be holy. You must respect them because God brought you into existence through them. Now, my mom had an issue, and I went to her room. I was very relaxed, and so she said something to me where she accused me. And the moment she accused me, I said to her, "Mom, when did I anything wrong to you in my whole life?" Was that an exaggeration? When did I ever did anything wrong to you in my whole life? I can't remember, because I'm a holy child. And of course, did my mom have arguments? Mothers remember all things. I can bring you a list. And I started an argument with my mom. I knew it was wrong, but I could not abstain. And of course, I immediately said, "Mom, we are the most stupid people. How can an adult man with 54 years old and a mother with 78 fight together? It's unreasonable. It's totally nonsense." And so we wept together, we prayed and said, "Lord, forgive us that we entered this battle." What did I do next day? Because I go next day usually in nature, and I talk and reason together with God. Why did I do yesterday what I did? It's self-examination. We must do this if we want to grow each day. We must every day examine the last day. In the evening, I'm so tired, I can hardly think. I say, Lord, keep me. Thank you for the day. And I fall asleep. But in the morning, when I'm still sleeping, I start analyzing my last day. Because that's my opportunity. Habits. Yes, you start on and say, what was yesterday? What was it wrong? What did I react? And so I asked God to show me the mirror. And so I said to God that next day I went into the wood, because we live close to the wood, and I said, Lord, I thank you that I got angry yesterday at my mom. Did you ever God thank when you saw your selfish nature? I said, I thank you. I know you have no problem to forgive me my action, but you have no interest in forgiving me my action. That's not the issue. You want to get me to see where was it that I am still bound with the umbilical cord to my mom. Where I still take from my mom. Because if I would have not taken from my mom, would I ever fight it with her? You never fight for the giving. You always fight for the taking. There is no fight, there is no conflict ever if you just want to give. Try it out. There is never a fight for giving. It's always a fight that you want to take. There is the battle. And I was unaware that I'm still, at 54, bound to my mother. You know, it's the hardest thing to know if you're still bound to your mother or not. But by God's grace, that bond must be out, because it says you have to hate your mother, not to hate her, to still take from her. That's the hardest thing. And thank God, He brings me into my house, and He brings the tension there to show me if my heart is still bound on mother. If I want to fix mother, I'm still bound on her. And that morning, God really was very gracious to me. He's every morning gracious to me. But that morning, He just showed me a picture of myself. He says, you want your mom should think like you. You want your mom with 78 years to have the same understanding as you have. To just know what you know. And I said, wow, how can I have this expectation for my mom who is 78? Why will I put my mind so high that I say, Mother, do you not read the Bible? Because I took that Bible, she reads the Bible all day. But I say, you read for nothing. And I said, Lord, you must help me to get rid of this. And that morning I said, it was that I want from my mother something. And I took the decision, I don't want anything from my mom again. Neither good to do me, neither evil to not do me. Just a few weeks later, my wife called me. I was in Romania doing meetings, and she said, your mom left. Didn't say anything. And that moment, my heart hurt, because my mom is a person that I think she has to trust me. And this time, she didn't tell me that she has plans to leave. She just left. Didn't say. And then my wife says, well, but we're living in a house. Why should we not communicate? I said, even though it hurted me in my heart, I said to her, our mom can come and go whenever she wants. She's in no responsibility to us, no matter if she lives with us or not. She is in no debt to us at all. That is in my reason, that's in my will, but in my heart, it might still not be. But how can you ever change the heart? Except reason. Except understanding where the problem is and saying, Lord, you now must help me that this idea, this expectation should go away. Would you like your mom to trust you? Yeah, you would like that she should inform you, but she does not do it because she is in enmity with you. I talked a few days later, after we had that first discussion, that first fight, my mom was depressed. My mom suffers from depression. And I went to her about 10 days later, and I said, Mom, I see you're still unhappy. And she says, after what you have done unto me? I said, Mom, I solved the problem. I went to God, I confessed, I took out the root of it, and I'm free. You should be free as well. And then my mom said, you did it to me. I said, this is the deception, Mom. If I sinned against you, with what could I pay to sin? Could I pay it with anything? Could I ever do it good? No, Mom. Mom, you would be in an impossibility to ever forgive me because I could never undo the action. That's why the Bible says, I only sinned against God. And God did bring the solution, so I sinned against God, not against you, Mom. If you think I sinned against you, then you must have that idea that you are a God. And thank God my mom understood. And the next day was fine. We got friends again. Now, my mom is slower sometimes, but that be slow until she learns. But I'm so happy that we have a solution for the problem. So I have to go every day to the cross. Do you think I did mistakes during this stay here? Yes. There's many. I'm so aware of my mistakes. And I have to go and say, Lord, this I have to get out of me. Because I know I'm a prisoner. So I go day by day. And as Christ grows through the Holy Spirit in my life, one day this thing will be removed. And at the end of my life, through sanctification process, or I say instead of sanctification, a liberation process, because it's the same thing. Liberation process. One day, here, you see the dark thing will become light, the borders of my life. And then when Jesus comes, He can transform me into a new creature, where I will bear His image. Like I bore the image of Adam, I will bear the image of the second Adam. I will have his body and his mind. I will be restored like never before. So let us see that the way out is only one, and it is the cross. You see, there is no other way to ever get rid of our problems except the cross. I now understand why Paul says, I am not ashamed of the gospel of Jesus Christ. What is the power of salvation? For whom? For everybody, because it is a battle of faith. And tomorrow morning at 11 o'clock, I will speak about the battle of faith versus the battle of works. Because I believe that we as religious people have not understood where the battle really is. And so we battle on works. And we try to be good behaviors. And we want to get rid of bad behavior. And we pray, God, give me patience. God, let me never be angry. And I have those kind of people who say, 10 years I prayed that I should not get angry, and I still get. I said, of course you prayed the wrong prayer. You must pray, why do I get angry? God cannot take your anger away. He has no access to your heart. He must reason with you that you must know how to take that away. It's the power that Christ gives you. But it's your action. It's a faith action that you want to get rid of your selfish nature and become a free agent. That's salvation. Our oldest son is now 37 years old. He got converted just 3 years ago. And he so good understood the law of life, how I call it, that he said, just the idea that one day I can be free again to do exactly what I want, to not be controlled by circumstances, is the greatest perspective of a saved person. Isn't that? That's salvation. It's the perspective that one day you're not a slave anymore of circumstance. You don't betray yourself in who you are, because the cross and the Christ in the heavenly sanctuary has done his job, and you and him are clean and free. This is our perspective. This is our inheritance. And to this I want to come. Any questions tonight?
Hi, Doctor. Thank you for this program. I'm so blessed, and I hope God help me to remember it every day and live it. And I want to ask you about last night thing. You said about a man. I think he's about 40 years old with patient, and he lost his daughter, the last daughter, and
Yes, the professor, the biology professor, 49.
yes, and he made himself as a God because he think she came from him, but
Yes.
from God. And you said, I think if I'm not mistaken, you said God took his daughter, and I wanna make if you can make it clearly for me, know about it. God is not, and He doesn't give you evil things or make it, how do I say it?
God does not do evil. Yes?
Yes.
Yes, of course. God does not do evil. That's why He allows evil only as He can do it for the good. And nothing evil happened on earth if He does not allow it. So that's why we can be very secure. There cannot come anyone here and shut us and kill us if God doesn't allow it. It's not possible. Because every effect is in God's hands because He's the lawgiver. And He sees the evil and He could say no. But He does not say no because He uses the evil for the good. So nothing, your child can never be killed by an accident if God not beforehand approved it. If God was surprised by it, then God is not in control of His universe. But He is. And He's not in control of the driver, but He's in control of circumstances. An angel could be there and kept the child to not run over. But He knew it, and He said, I will use this for the salvation of this whole family. Because the error of our mind, of our heart, is not possible to be taken away if we do not go through suffering. So God offered His first son, which was Abel, to open the eyes of Cain. Did not God know that Cain will kill Abel? Did you know it or not? Yes. Why did He allow Abel to be killed? Because it was his son, his child, his faithful child. He allowed it to be killed for the purpose that Cain should see that something in him is wrong. Because Cain didn't see it. Cain thought, everything is fine with me. You, God, has a problem because you don't accept my offering. So, to the whole story of the Bible, you will see that God only allows evil, and He must allow it that it might be seen if He can turn it into the good. So there is no circumstance. The Bible says there is no circumstance that God is not in control of. Everything that He and happens on this earth must pass His approval. When the devil came and wanted to tempt Job, would He have tempted Job? He said, Lord, you have put a circle around him. I cannot touch him. Because God did not allow it to him. And then the devil comes and says, Peter is my son, because in his heart I am the king, not you. Can I show it to you that he's mine? And God says, please, I will prove to you that he's not yours. But through his failure, I prayed for him that he should see it and repent. And by repentance, God proved that Peter was a disciple of him. But Peter would have not been able to be tempted if God would have not said, yes, do it. So we must know, we must have a clear conception of the universe. God does not control what I want. God controls what I do. If a person jumps from the highest top to kill itself and God does not want it to die because he knows the error of his mind and he needs a lecture, he will not die. But if it's in God's approval to die, he dies.
Why did Judas have to kiss Jesus when everybody already knew Jesus, and we knew that the kiss was a kiss of betrayal?
Well, it was dark. There had only torches. Jesus was not like we see it in pictures with a different way to be clothed. Yes, he was just as all other people. And where should they know who was it? Because if they were all with beard, they were all the same look. So there must be a sign that they say, this is it, in that darkness, in that dark hour, because there was no lights like with us. And so that's why that kiss was needed to just see that he was Jesus. Because he was not shining a light around him to just see him. Imagine you have people, 12 people or however you were, but maybe it was other people as well there, and they look all the same, they are dressed similar. How will you make the difference? Whom you shall in darkness find. And the people who came with him, that mob, didn't know Jesus. They might have never seen him before. So they came and said, who is it? And I will show it to you. Because Jesus was there, he was not known by everyone. So that kiss was necessary, that he should identify Jesus. Yes?
How would you explain Jesus' words when he told Judah right before he left the room?
What you do quickly.
Do quickly, in the line of thought that you explained this week.
Yes, well, when Judas left the upper room, he went beyond the situation to come back. He could not return anymore. Because Judas' last chance was when Jesus washed his feet. And when he saw Jesus washing his feet, he said, hey, this cannot be the king of this cannot be the king, this cannot be the Messiah, because he washes the feet of his servants. And in Judas' mind, to think he would ever wash the feet of John, who was always in competition with him, who is the greatest. You know, Judas was on the left side and John was on the right side of Jesus, and they always competed, who is first. And so when Judas washed his feet, he took the decision, I won't do that to my disciples, to my fellow friends. The grace that changed, the love that brought the other disciples to repentance, brought Judas to hard desire. That's why he said, what you do quickly. So thank you very much, and I give microphone.